All right, what's going on, guys? This video is for the week of March 23rd, closing week of the month, closing week of the quarter as well. So, it's been a fun last 2 weeks. So, personally, I'm probably not looking to go aggressive this week. Um, yeah, SNDK and MU were great the past 2 weeks. Kind of my game plan into MU earnings was a whole run up, and it played out pretty perfectly. So happy with my performance that I was able to capitalize on that. And yeah, now it's time to look at that next phase. What's going to move, what's going to lead. And that was really hard to tell when SPX was really just chopping around all year. So the good part about now is, SPX is finally starting to follow through to the downside. So in terms of just how I trade as well, what I'm really looking for is, with SPX following down, what's holding up, maybe what's still going higher, what's leading, to really look at what can be a really big winner, when SPX does turn up. But even SPX going lower will give you some better opportunities for the downside on SPX, because SPX's day trades has been, really tough to capitalize on really consistently. So we'll see if we get some follow through there, and we'll be able to pull some relative strength out. But yeah, economic data this week, so really nothing going on. Initial jobless claims Thursday. Other than that, I don't think there's really anything to focus on. So simple with that. And also with earnings as well, really nothing as well. You have PDD, I guess Carnival Cruise Line, GameStop might be a little fun, I guess. Pony, interesting, but other than that, really nothing big reporting. Let me actually just double check if we have a date for TE. Let's just double check this. I know TE isn't really on deep view. It says May 7th. That is not correct. Let's do this. TE EPS date. Let's just see if we get a credible source. NASDAQ is good. March 23rd. See, so this does say Monday. I'll confirm that, and I'll put it in the Discord as well. But TE would honestly be the only one that I'm really focused on in terms of what can move. Sorry, let me pull deep view back up. So we'll see if TE reports tomorrow. Kind of mixed data on when their earnings come out. It's a smaller company, so kind of makes sense. But other than that, nothing really going on. So now it's really all about, to be honest, one thing. What does Trump say with the Iran war? That's another big factor of why it's been really hard to trade SPX, because he can say one thing in a moment and it completely switches the trend of what was going on. So I would love that to be over before I really start executing on SPX again, but doesn't mean we can't find strength. So a couple things I want to look at. We'll look at SPY real quick just to see where the current trend is at. But the big level last week with these indexes, SPY undercut this massive quarterly level that I really thought was going to hold first attempt, and it might be a big liquidity grab there. If you can see, every time you get kind of that big red bar, it tends to be a bottom, kind of like a capitulation bar. So let's look at these examples. Big red bar here, trend higher after. Big red bar here. Sorry, when I say red bar, I'm referring to the volume, but also I guess on the chart, but mainly the volume. Big flush down, trended up higher. Big flush down, high volume, trended up higher. And you're getting the same thing here. So, a couple other things for that bull case. We're really stretched from the 9 MA. We tagged the monthly. There's a big quarterly level right there. So if we do reclaim that, we could want to go higher. And you have really high volume here. So all this volume really tells you is it's really hard for SPY to have another big red bar to the downside and for volume to pick up. If it does, great, we're going to follow through. But usually that's going to be capitulation when volume gets to a point of where, okay, can we really go higher from here? Because that's kind of like, okay, how many more sellers can sort of come in after that? Not saying anything's not possible to go down more. Again, Trump can completely switch what a chart looks like. So that's kind of the news factor we're playing with SPY. But from an outside perspective, all of these high red volume bars, they've been bottoms. So let's see if that plays out for SPY this week. You really want to see that 651 area reclaim. Let's take a look at QQQ. QQQ not really as clear with the volume bars, but you can still see similar patterns. Every time it has that big volume flush, it tends to react higher after. Obviously, what you'd want to see on a reaction higher is if the volume can actually somewhat pick up or at least hold and then pick up on a breakout, because you will want to see that volume switch in terms of like, okay, higher volume on green bars rather than higher volume on red bars. But yeah, big area on QQQ. We're looking at this monthly again. That's that 583 area. We can get back over that with SPY over the quarterly. Maybe we retest the 9MA. In no way am I saying the trend is switched up, but it's just in terms of what could happen next type of thing. But both of them, you're getting the 9MA stretch from the 21 stretch from the 50. Same thing on SPY. I mean, you really can't be bullish, and even if you are it doesn't mean you can't take calls, but if you are taking calls, you have to have a quicker mindset. You have to have, a risk off strategy in terms of pulling profits quicker, sizing down, things like that. But just what's possible for what's next. MU and SNDK, I just really want to talk about quick in terms of not a direct setup, but if you mark up monthlies, quarterlies, monthlies, weeklies, I know there's not too many levels up here with those, but if you mark those up, they provide really, really good day trades at the moment. The liquidity's not as worn out as the other names. Some of them are, some names that are under the 50, under the 9, under the 21, those some charts that are more broken. They're not providing that great liquidity on options like MU and SNDK. And MU and SNDK have been great for up, which is what I focused on, but they've absolutely been just as good on the downside as well. So just playing those levels, just for example, one trade, MU back over 428 on Monday, it can test 438. Little stuff like that. You take a $3-4 contract on a weekly, it can double, triple. So don't think it's too expensive. Still going far out of the money. They have liquidity. You have to be quicker with your decisions, and you have to understand the option you bought. But just wanted to point these names out in terms of like, they can provide fast, returns on these options, and you don't need to go $10 options contracts to play these. They can be played with smaller ones. So just something to keep in mind. But yeah, let's get into some. I can't remember the last time I had short setups, so I'll be cautious with them. But I definitely want to look. I don't want to completely miss the downside if we do keep following through or just pop on low volume. But let's look at some of the long setups first. So a lot of the themes with these is going to be volume, which I'll be showing you too. So let's start with POWL. This was a 10-300 name. You had the run up from earnings, and then these two pinkish bars. Those are the high volume close and high volume high from the 10-300 day. So POWL's been fighting with it. Hasn't been able to break back over that high volume close. It's getting tight. Really good inside day, and I really like this volume switch. You have the run up on high volume, and then you have this downtrend on really low volume. That's what you're looking for. That shows me buyers are still in control. This hasn't switched up yet. So ideally what we're looking for here, it's held to 50. If we can pop back over this high volume close, you're reclaiming the 9MA and you're reclaiming the 21MA. I know we have wicks here, so you could wait for a reclaim over and then a back test, and then if it follows through, that's ideally a safer entry. I might be taking the breakout. What I like to do with these is, let's say I want to go 4 contracts, 5 contracts. Maybe I'll scale into 3 first. If it fails, I exit the 3, and then if it does back test and give me that perfect entry, I'll scale into the other 2 and take my full position. But yeah, just plan ahead on how you want to play it. If you have a smaller account, you got to be a little more mindful on your entries. If you have a larger account, you can play around with it and kind of scale into it over the course of a couple minutes or an hour or so. But yeah, that 527.30 pivot, I'm looking at that on POWL, because if we do follow through, 570 is a really big range to play. And look, happened in, what was this bar off of it? 530 to 560. POWL's having $20 to $30 range bars in a day, so can happen quickly. So ideally, that's what I'm looking for. Let's go to MRVL. So I did mark up what I'm looking for on this one, but let's see if it happens. So MRVL, similar theme, pop up on 10-300, rejecting off the high volume close. You have the high volume open down here and the high volume low down here. So ideally we're targeting these right now, It's following the trend. It was falling on low volume. It kind of had a pop in volume on Friday. So, if it gets taken off my watch list, for example, if it falls on Monday and it accelerates in volume, this trade becomes harder, in terms of like we could accelerate. Sellers are stepping up rather than dying down. So big thing I'm looking for is if it does test this high volume open and high volume close, is it on low volume? And does it give me that undercut and reversal near this 21 MA and reclaim the level? If it does, ideally I'm looking to go long. You have a respect of a channel, you have multiple support levels coming up, and you have a 21 MA coming up. So if we could get that entry here and get that follow through, we have a decent target, almost a, 5x in terms of risk to reward. So just one I'm looking at, but could switch up quickly. That's why just adapt as the days go on. GLRE, so this is an interesting one. This one had 10,300, based right next to the 9, ripped off of it. Sorry, I believe this was 10,300. My bad. I didn't see the volume on this one. Beautiful base, and you have a really key level. If I zoom out a little bit, there we go. There's the tag. So really key level coming up in terms of the back test. 2 reasons: quarterly level, and you also have the 9 MA catching up right there. So couple things, other than the support, you're also given, what's this entry? You're looking at 1585 to 17. It's a really good profit target in terms of the follow through. So the only thing I don't like, again, similar to MRVL, is that volume accumulation on Friday. So we'll see how this one reacts. If it falls again, lower volume, undercut and reversal off that 1584 level. Undercut and reversal under the 9 MA, those are the entries I want to look for. But I need that volume to kind of just chill out or die down. So we'll see how that one plays out. So MRVL and GLRE still kind of wishy-washy. Dave's an interesting one. So a couple things on Dave. Just want to show you the larger chart. Forget all the nonsense on the other side. They've really started to accelerate earnings. Let's see if we could catch something here. 117, 197, 62, 634, 457. So just a little fundamental change, and you could kind of see it with their EPS right now. But what's really intriguing is, I've watched this for almost a couple of years now too, but 4 to 40 based, it's a 10x, no one sold based. 42 to 90, another doubler, no one sold. 96, another 3x. You have some sellers, but the base is unbelievably strong compared to what this move has been doing. Let's look on a weekly, just a little more structure. Like for this to remain as strong as it's been, it's phenomenal. So just keep that in mind. So looking at the weekly, you have a pop. Earnings is there, it's making money, great, but you have a pop, good volume, 2 inside weeks, nearly inside weeks, on significantly lower volume, volume decreasing. 50 MAs coiling with the 21 and the 9. I'd love that 9 MA to start hooking up and catch up, but you have lower highs being made, or sorry, lower highs. You have higher lows being made. You have volume in the right place. Let's go to a daily. Even on a daily, you have the base ripped up, high volume, moving lower, low volume. If Dave can get over that 213.22 monthly level, ideally on higher volume, I think I'll probably take the break right away and give it a shot. Kind of similar to how POWL's set up. Maybe take the break initially. If it comes back, gives me a good retest and starts following through again, I'll probably scale into some more. But you have decent profit targets, 213 to 221, 221 to 229. These are good, and I know Dave can move fast. And, just in terms of what the broader market looks like, SPX has been, ripping lower hundreds of points, and Dave held up the entire past 2 weeks. That stuff doesn't go unnoticed. So volume's there, moving averages are there, levels there for you to play, relative strength is there. I think Dave and POWL are my favorite setups. Yeah, and then five is more of a watch just for how it develops. It had a 10,300 day on Thursday, held up relatively well in terms of what the market did on Friday, but can this tighten up? Can this break above that high volume close, that high volume high? Can it base on lower volume? So that's all stuff I'll look for. But ideally, I would like to give this one, if it breaks up on Monday, I don't know if I like it. Maybe 1 or 2 more days, let the 9 MA catch up just a little bit. Yeah, it'll give you a better risk to reward. So MRVL, GLRE, 5, more of a watch and see if they develop. Dave and Powell, I think, are my favorite longs. And even me saying my favorite longs, I'm really not sizing up in this market. So everything I do take will be maybe half size compared to what I normally do, and I'll have stops in place. I'll have ideas in place for what I want to do when I'm in the trade. But yeah, let's look at some shorts. So DNTH had a 10-300 a couple weeks ago, but just again, volume tells the story. Volume tells the truth, really. Charts tell the story. Volume honestly tells you what's real. So just what I'm looking at here, you have a clear pivot. High volume low from the 10-300 day. Tested it 3 times now. What happens on this red bar though? Big, not even big, decent increase in volume. The increase in volume is really all I care about. It doesn't even have to be that large. Larger than the past 4 days, maybe even the past 7 days actually. So all I'm looking for is, can it follow through under that 76? Does it increase in volume off of that? And you have, almost a $10 range until that gap fill from 10-300. The only other thing I'll note too, when you're watching 10-300, any of those therapeutic stocks, for example, like this one, any pharmaceuticals, therapeutics, those types of names that gap up on 10-300, those easily have the highest chance of reversing back lower. Sometimes they follow through, but in terms of, what could be a good short, it's going to be a pharmaceutical, it's going to be a therapeutics company 9 times out of 10. So that's just another idea to keep in mind. So yeah, we'll see if that one follows through under 76. Same idea. Maybe I enter here, maybe I enter on the break, comes back, test 76. If you get that follow through down, that's where I'd go full position. Target the 21 MA and then target the gap fill, but ideally you're probably scaling out before that. That's a big profit range. AVGO is setting up. So another one that I kind of just want to give it a day or two. I want to really see how it acts at that 317. It's kind of in the middle of this larger range that I put. You have a really clear liquidity zone up here, really clear liquidity zone down here. So honestly, what I'm looking for is, and it's noticeable. So a couple things. AVGO tested this range down here, ripped back up to 346, tested the range again, ripped back up to 346, 352, tested the range again. If AVGO can, only get to 317 or even only get to this 330, that would be prime entry for shorts. Anywhere near that, what is this one right here? That's 50% of the rectangle. Yeah, anywhere near this 330 or even anywhere near this 9, 21, and 50, that's prime entry. But 317 is my first one I'm looking at because, you figure even if it bases down here for a day and then gives you an entry the next day, this 9's already going to be caught up. So, if I'm looking at it from a structured base, volume pop, MA's coiling down, clear liquidity, you have a clear defined, kind of what did it do last time it tested here? So is it weaker next time? And you have clear entries coming up. I really like AVGO after a couple days or even a day of a base or kind of a chill moment just to let these MAs catch up a little bit. Palantir, so another one. This one's been fighting with the 50 MA. 9 MA caught up, 21 MA just directly below it. And one thing to notice, so again with volume, on this whole downtrend, you have a really big increase in volume here, and then you have that pop. But I mean, it's a little bit of an increase, but I wouldn't consider that significant at all. So the only good thing right now, or was good until Friday, I would say Friday kind of cracked it a little bit. You had a little increase in volume, and then you had a decrease in volume with Palantir basing. But this Friday bar kind of, opened the door a little bit to that downside. Maybe it can't get over the 50, can't get over the 9. So what I'm really looking for is if it gets under that 148.22 and starts following through under that 21 MA, 142 can come fairly quickly, especially when we're under all the moving averages. So that's one thing I'm looking for. Can we pop on volume? Can we get under that 148? Can we get under that 21? And 142 should be targets on that short. And then yeah, any stops, let's say Palantir opens at 151 and then breaks. You could go high of day. You could go 9 MA stop. Ideally give yourself a little room, but I'll all these setups honestly have similar entries. You know, they all have levels, so I'm going to be looking for the breaks on a half size entry, and then I'll be looking to go maybe a little more if they give me that prime entry. But they're really similar entries for all of them. Circle. So this one's interesting. This is probably my favorite setup for a short, just in terms of, I guess, what's possible. You know, Bitcoin's been pretty strong. Circle had a 10-300 day all the way down here, and then just absolutely melted faces. You know, I really regret not catching this one at all. But a couple things to notice. Since the 10-300 day, yes, we've gone higher, but this volume is just, it's not convincing in any way at all. So what I'm really looking for here, a couple things. Volume's dead. We haven't broken the 9 as well. Circle finally tested the 9 on Thursday, finally tested it again on Friday, and started to give you that little volume increase. So what I'm looking for, you know, simple on Monday. If it gets under 124, I'm going to go short. You know, no ifs, ands, or buts. If it gets under 124, I'll take something. I'm not going to go full, but I will take something. If it does, you know, break under, then come back up, give me that 124 test again, start breaking down again, maybe I add more. But ideally, under 124, you're looking at 108 next hard resistance, or next hard support. Sorry. So big profit range. You know, big name in terms of what it's been doing the past couple weeks, and you know, just in terms of its counterparts. So let's just look at MSTR. MSTR didn't do anything when Circle was having that rally. The only one that really did, which isn't on the list, but let's just look at it quick, was Coin. You know, but it wasn't nearly comparable to what Circle's run is like. You know, I believe Circle's up probably almost, what do we got? 60 to 130. Yeah, you're almost looking at over a double. That's amazing in 3 weeks. So, you know, Circle can come down, especially if Bitcoin starts cracking, MSTR starts cracking, Coin starts cracking. This could be one that wants to fall, you know, quickly, significantly, you know, all that stuff you really need for good options duplication. So we'll see how expensive they are, but I'll be looking at that one under 124. MSTR I had on here. So I might just use this as a pair trade for Circle, in terms of, you know, if MSTR is following through to the downside, that kind of gives me more conviction for Circle. But you do have, you know, same theme. Follow through to the downside, increasing volume, tried to move higher. Volume was dead. Starting to crack back under the MAs, volume's increasing. We get under that 131, we can start testing that 120. And you know, that's where that Circle trade can really start getting good too. So I'll be looking for that downside on crypto. LEU, just again, another one, significant volume to the downside, under the 9, under the 21, under the 50 MA. And then you have that really big volume pop on Friday. So with a clear level defined. So under 182, you know, we have 174, and then what is this one? Zoom out a little bit. I believe it's like 167. So great profit targets, simple setup too. You know, that 182 can't hold. Ideally, this one gives you maybe a base on Monday, just to let that 9 MA maybe catch up a little bit. But under that 182, we can see 174. Simple. The only thing I don't know with this one is how those spreads are on the premium. So I will check those come Monday. Yeah, last one we have NP. So this one's a little harder. This one might be another watch, just because of how significant this move was from Wednesday to Friday. You know, 60 to 50 on a name like this, that's not a small move. But I'm gonna keep it on my focus. You know, things moved ridiculously higher. Hasn't really made any money. You know, kind of just that hype theme. You have a really clear level at 50. So again, similar to LEU, can we get that day or two base, you know, maybe under 51, maybe even back above it, let that 9 MA catch up, and then we can take that break back lower if we see that volume pick up again. But yeah, other than that, you know, just even looking at these setups for how the past couple weeks has been, this is not a stellar, it's not an A+ roster in terms of the setups for this week. So again, just from the start of the video, I'm really looking to chill this week. You know, if I enter any of these, they're lighter size, you know, maybe a couple contracts, maybe not even 5. So we'll go from there. But I'm really looking to collect premium on ASTS. I'll collect premium on my MU position. And yeah, we chill. I did open MU before the close. We actually got a pretty decent close. I did open MU right around 417 when it wicked near that 414 level. So we'll see how the open is. I don't believe we got too significant a news in terms of Trump. I saw something on the war ending, something on him deploying troops. It's really nothing new. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, moral of the story, still some decent setups, but nothing to go heavy on. You know, relaxing week, close out the quarter, keep your profits safe. That's really how I'm thinking. But yeah, see how it goes. All right, see ya.